Good day, everyone, and welcome to Different Stages Radio. I'm your host, JJ, broadcasting in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. And I'm very excited today to have a gentleman that I've known for many years who's been very supportive to me and the things I've done musically. Many of you know him regionally throughout British Columbia as a radio personality. He's appeared on many a station and is still a part of the radio lifestyle. Please welcome my guest. You may know him better as Danger, Darren Grieve. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing fine, my friend. Good to see you again.
Good to see you. I appreciate you taking the time to be a guest. It's kind of a long time coming. It seems like we've come full circle now.
I've been watching some of your podcasts, and I thought, geez, I don't know if I'm worthy for this one or not. I'm just going to, because you get some pretty big names on here, so I'm honored to be here, my friend.
Well, that's the thing, is wanting to have that cross, people and people that are making moves. And that's the thing, is that I don't want to, I look at all the people that have helped me along the way. And if I can assist anybody, big or small, medium size, getting their name and their product and their awareness out there, then it's all good. I kind of look back at growing up a big fan of the David Letterman, and right. I look at Dave back in the day, in the 80s when he was really taking off, and he'd have the big time movie stars, and then I remember he'd have a grandma on there with her potato chip collection. Her potato chips looks like a duck, and this looks like of China. And I'm like, this is awesome. So I kind of take those things with me.
Am I going to have to do some sort of stupid human trick here at some point then? Is that where this is leading?
Perhaps, maybe the Velcro wall?
Most things I do are stupid human tricks. So yeah, just keep recording. It'll happen on its own.
We need the Velcro wall. The classic Velcro wall would be the best.
I worked at a nightclub. Probably they stole this idea from Letterman now that I think of it. But I worked at a nightclub back in the very early 90s. And they used to have a night where they would actually bring in the Velcro wall. And I think to myself, now, would they ever do that at a nightclub? Put people in these jumpsuits in an environment where there's a lot of alcohol being consumed and get them to run across the floor and throw themselves at the wall? I don't know how they got away with it, but it was fun to watch.
Different times. Times.
Sure was.
Things we could get away with. So people that are going to be checking out this video, I will hope that there's going to be people from the Vancouver, Lower Mainland, British Columbia region, but we're hoping to hit up some people outside of the province. For people who may not know you, or I'm thinking there's still some people that may only know the voice, but haven't really seen the face because you've been a radio guy for so long. Fill some people in on your background and your history to get to know you a bit better.
Yeah, well, as far as Vancouver radio goes, I guess my first rock radio gig would have been CHRX, which is that little bullet, that thing you see. That's an old bus back right there up on the wall. That was a classic rock station, and that was my first time being on the air in a big city, and it's a city I grew up in, so it meant a lot to me. So I was there for a while, but after about a year, they changed the formats. They do this all the time in radio now, but at the time I wasn't familiar with this being something that happens. But they switched from classic rock to Christian rock. So you can understand that I probably didn't last too long there. I think I lasted one or two shifts and said, I don't think this is for me. And then I worked at a couple of smaller stations. And then eventually they fired up XFM here in Vancouver, which was an alternative station. And I did afternoon drive there for the entire time they were on the air, which was just about 4 years. And then they flipped the format again to, it was Christmas music, essentially. When I drove home, it turned into Christmas music with my little envelope tucked under my arm. And about 6-7 weeks later, I got hired at CFOX, and I spent almost a decade there. And that, I think most people, if they do know me, they probably know me from one of those two stations, from XFM or CFOX. And to me, those are the stations. That's the reason I got into radio, was to work for stations exactly like that, to be closer to music. You and I are the same as far as how we love music and being close to it. I really wanted to interview the artists and all that, and I got to do a lot of that with those two jobs. And I'm still working in radio today. After CFOX, I was at Shore 104 for a little while. Then they switched formats again. And then I've been off and on for about 7 years now, part-time at JACKFM. And I do a retro alternative show on Sonic 104.9 in Vancouver. That's Sundays from 6 to noon. That we do once a week, which is a lot of fun. It's kind of funny because to me, it doesn't seem like it was that long ago when I worked at XFM, but now it's a retro show. All the stuff that I played that was brand new, it's all considered classic rock of its day. So I guess that's the gray hair kind of backs it up, but I don't feel it in here half the time.
Keeping yourself real with that tiger shirt on, so it's all it's all good. Now it's funny how you mentioned XFM, because I need to find this, and I know I have this buried somewhere, and maybe you recall this because I'm pretty sure you did the voiceover piece on this. Is I have a promo of an Iron Maiden midnight sale that was done. I'm pretty sure it was you. I don't know if you remember this. It was a promo that was done through XFM for Iron Maiden midnight sale, which I think was for Dance of Death, which I was trying to backtrack. I think it was around 2003. Does that sound about right?
That would have been about right. Yeah, that rings a bell. I don't think I actually went to that on sale, but I remember voicing something along those lines because
Yeah.
at the time, because here's the thing, it was unique at XFM because we didn't really play metal, we played alternative, so you would have never heard Black Sabbath or Maiden or Priest or any of that stuff. At CFOX, a couple of years later, different story, especially when I started to do the metal show. But at XFM, I found it unique. But it told me that, well, people are paying, so the radio station will take the money. So I did voice that. I'd forgotten all about that, though. If you have a copy of that, I'd love
Yeah,
to.
I actually have it on CD somewhere. I know I
Oh,
have it.
wow,
I
yeah.
need to dig it out. Yeah, because that's how it got mailed to me. It was like, oh, sent in the mail. How does this sound? Because you couldn't send a file like that,
Yeah.
at the time. And I think it was just more as a reference point. I'm like, this is awesome, but I know I have it. I just need to locate it.
Oh, I'd love to hear that.
'Cause, yeah, it's one of those little paper envelopes that is easy enough to get slid between another case and just becomes
Yeah.
history. And it's the
Well,
thing you find when you're not looking for it.
and the thing with that type of commercial is like that's just part of your job. You do your shift, and then if the producer needs you to voice any spots, you go in there and you voice whatever he tells you to voice. I probably took great pride in doing the Maiden one. But I think half the reason I'd forgotten about it is because I would do 2 or 3 a day. That was just part of your job duties.
Well, you talk about taking pride, and I'll fast forward to CFOX, where, of course, we can get to the shop in a bit. But the drive home, I always enjoyed when I was working at the store. I'd be done the store at 6. I'd be listening to you on my way home between 6 and 7. And it seemed that at that point you had a bit more freedom. And all of a sudden it's like I'm hearing some things that I wouldn't normally expect to hear, but it always made the drive that much more enjoyable. And I could hear not just the music was good, but I could also hear it just seemed like you had a bit more spark behind you. I could just see the smile through the airwaves of you enjoying what you were playing.
I think you're thinking about the Rock Report. I'm imagining
The
that.
Rock Report, yeah.
Well, here
So Tesla and stuff. I remember that. It's like, this is awesome.
it
And
was.
cool stuff.
It's and Todd Hancock was the co-host. Him and I did that show together. And I'll tell you, that is probably the most fun I've ever had in radio. Is that show right there? That 1 hour, Monday to Friday. And you talk about freedom. We had a reasonable amount of freedom, but we also created a whole ton of freedom as well. The old, better to beg for forgiveness than ask for permission. This pretty much was the motto of the Rock Report. If you heard a show that you thought was particularly awesome as far as the music selection and the things we were talking about, you can probably bank on the fact that we had a meeting with the boss the next day about that show. So we were constantly bending the rules. And I always found that weird, when you apply for jobs at radio stations, especially if it's a rock type format, usually the ad would say we're looking for people that live the lifestyle. They certainly had that in Todd and myself. There's no question about it. And then you have this job, but then they try and tie your hands a little bit. And I've always found that kind of odd. But we got away with quite a bit of stuff there. We used to play all kinds of cool music that you'd never hear on the radio. But there's where radio can be a little bit tricky sometimes, because you play this stuff that not really radio friendly, but everybody knows it. Everybody loves it. Some of these bands, you would never play. I don't know. Well, we must have played Slayer once or twice. That would be pushing it a little bit, though, at 6 o'clock at night. But say we would play Seasons in the Abyss from Slayer. We'd get in trouble for that. But as we all know, when Slayer comes to town, they're on a bill that's usually at GM Place at Rogers Arena. So there are people like these guys. So I always found it funny that you'd always have this tug of war with management. The listeners loved it, though.
Well, especially when these shows, too, were often presented by CFOX.
Well, that's just it, right?
Yeah.
That's just it. Yeah, and I'm glad that it was obvious that we both loved it, because we really did. I mean, it was our favorite part of the workday. He would do his afternoon show, and I would meet him at 6. We'd discuss what we're going to do, and then we would just let it fly for 60 minutes, and then my evening show would start after that. But that 60 minutes doing the Rock Report was so much fun. Plus, we got to give a lot of exposure to local bands, which I take a lot of pride in. I just think that was probably one of the coolest things. When you think of some of the big bands in Vancouver that have come out of this city, most of them started at the Rock Report. And I'm not trying to take credit for any of their success. It was just awesome that I had a place to give them a bit of a spotlight to help get them rolling. To me, if I have like anything I'm most proud of, it's probably that. When I look at a band, like my kid loves Mariana's Trench. First time they ever interviewed in Vancouver was on the Rock Report. I'm proud of that. Look what they've done. We weren't wrong. They are a good band, and they're now successful. And so to have any part in that is something I do take a lot of pride in.
That is very cool, very cool. And then how that bled into, I guess maybe it was a bookend of your day then. So you had the Rock Report starting your day, and then at one point ending your day would be the shop, which was a lot of fun.
Yeah, and you co-hosted many times with us on the shop. That's the metal show. That was Monday nights at 11, so it's only once a week. But that show, if we had freedom on the Rock Report, I had complete free reign on the metal show because nobody in programming liked metal, listened to it, so they didn't know if I was doing it right or wrong. They just let me have it. I think what they realized is, like you say, when these bands come to town and the station would present them, they're getting some money. These promoters pay to have these ads on the air. So if you're playing metal, these people are going to spend money to advertise on the metal show. So it actually worked out well for everybody. But what I mostly loved is, it was as a kid who grew up loving Sabbath and Priest and Maiden and Accept and all these bands, I could play whatever I wanted, and nobody questioned me at all the entire time I did that show. We had guests that would come in besides yourself, but bands would come in sometimes. Some of my best sort of radio stories happened on that late hour because you can get away with a lot more, even behind the scenes while the mics aren't on. A couple of libations to get people loosened up a little bit. There was some pretty good nights in that control room.
Totally. And what's funny is that I kind of broke this shirt out on purpose. It's not from the album per se, my Nevermore shirt, but I broke it out to break this out because I'm gonna throw this at you. And this came out in July 2005. So back in 2005, it was June 2005, about a few weeks before this album came out, I had an advance of the single, The Final Product. And that was the very first song I ever played on the shop with you. So that will be coming up 20 years in June.
Holy smokes.
Yeah.
First of all, how do you remember that?
Those are things I remember. What did I eat yesterday? I don't know. That's the stuff that I retain, and I believe you do as well. That's what music fans do. They retain these weird trivia things.
Yeah, some of it. That one I didn't remember at all. But you're right. Some of the stuff that I keep in my head here, it's like, why do I know that? But I don't know. I forget how I drove here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
the important stuff.
Yeah,
the important
20
stuff.
years ago, though.
20 years. So that picture that just came up on Facebook recently of you and I at the Red Room on stage.
Yes.
That wasn't 20 years ago, but that was pretty close, was it
not?
That
was 2010.
Still 14.
November 2010. Yeah, so 14 years ago. Yeah. That was the Nevermore show.
That's why I brought it up.
It all connects to Nevermore, see?
Yeah.
So for those tuning in, Nevermore, quick story is I was very excited to have Nevermore play what turned out to be, we didn't know at the time, their very last ever North American show. And it was part of the Scrape Records anniversary. That would have been, I'm losing my mind now, 14th anniversary, somewhere around there, 13. And Danger was very cool enough to be emceeing that night, and it was just a very glorious evening.
That was a good time, and seeing them on that stage too, I'll never forget that. What a night. That was
packed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Crazy.
Yeah, geez. So 14 years. So it was so if it was the 14th anniversary of Scrape, and it's been 14 years since that night, we're going on 28 years of Scrape to now.
Yeah, sorry. So actually, that would have been 13. So so 27. So it was November 1st, 1997 is when I opened the store.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's crazy amount of time. Yeah. So 27 years ago.
But we're not old though. We're still young.
No. If people care to do the math, I was 24 at the time. I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
Yeah, you can do the math.
That's pretty impressive to open a record store at 24 years of age.
I wasn't thinking. I think that sometimes when you're most creative, or maybe you're willing to take the biggest chances, is when you're not thinking.
Exactly.
And then perhaps as age creeps up on you, then you're like, well, maybe you don't have that time to fall off the cliff. Yeah.
Yeah. I've thought about when I first started in radio, before I had the jobs in Vancouver, I worked in a couple of small markets. I started in Port Hardy, and I worked in Merritt for a couple of years. I worked in Squamish for a little while. And there's no way I could do that now for a lot of different reasons. But I think the only reason I toughed it out long enough to actually, make it in a major market is because I was so young. I didn't know any better. Like, my first radio job paid so little. But the job I left was pumping gas at a Petro-Canada station for $5 an hour. So what's the difference? There was no difference except it was.
It's true. So that's the thing. So when I was working at HMV at the time to open a store, I was making I remember $7.65 an hour.
Yeah,
And I somehow was able to pay my rent and stuff at the time. But that's the thing, is that as things build up over time and just more
yeah.
responsibility, that sort of thing, it's like, well, I can't jump backwards,
No, could never do it.
to a 65 job.
There was people in my broadcasting school that I remember that were, because I started a month after high school. I was I hated school. But when I got signed up for this course, I started in August of my grad summer. And there was people that were in that course that were like 30, 35 years of age. They had a wife or a kid. They got their first job. And I remember one guy in particular, I can't remember his name, but he had a wife and a kid, and his first job was over in Courtenay, which is the same radio chain that I worked for in Port Hardy. So I knew they don't pay very well. And with all his responsibilities, he couldn't do it. And his dream died about 3 months after he went over to Courtenay, and he never got a chance to pursue it. So for me, when anybody says, "Oh, you're really good at it," or whatever, any of those kind of accolades, it's flattering. But at the same time, most of it is the fact that I was young and dumb enough to just not give up. I had the freedom to not give up. I had the freedom to be poor for a while. Now I feel poor, but I don't feel free.
Riding high, living free, all that stuff. Yeah. So
yeah,
you're talking earlier about shows and stuff. Is there some shows in general that you're looking forward to, or shows from the past? Here's a quick one. Do we know what was the first show that Danger ever saw? What was your very first show? It doesn't have to be metal. What was your first show?
No, it wasn't quite metal, but it was on the edge of metal. It was the Kiss show, 1979. Kiss played the Pacific Coliseum. I was a Kiss freak by then. My best friend at the time, Dave White. When we discovered Kiss, everything else disappeared. It was only Kiss. Like a lot of kids in the 70s, you were sucked right into that. So I bugged my dad for quite a few weeks to buy tickets, and he did. He caved, and he bought tickets to the show, and we just thought it was the greatest thing at all. I can remember. Matter of fact, what are we at, the 20th of November right now that we're doing this? Yesterday was the anniversary of that Kiss show at the Pacific Coliseum. So 1979. Yesterday was my first ever show. I can remember my parents kept the tickets. It's weird the things you remember. We were just talking about this, but I can vividly remember the concert tickets in my parents' china cabinet, and I would look at them almost every single day. I would open them, I would hold them, I would look at them. I just couldn't believe I was going to be in the same room as my absolute heroes. And then when we get there, Poor Loverboy was opening the show, who went on to be huge. Great band, but they were unknown at the time, an unknown Vancouver band, and they got the gig opening up for Kiss, and they only lasted a few songs. They got booed off the stage. I don't know that I've seen that happen since, really, at a show. You heard about people getting booed off the stage, but they did that night. I guess Kiss fans were just that way back then. The show itself, I have a few memories of, as far as, some of the events within the show and some of the stage trickery and all that kind of stuff. But I was 10 years old. I was a little kid, was just in heaven. And it changed my life. It really did change my life. I knew that I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew that I had to somehow be around rock and roll. I heard this quote from Jimmy Page one time, and I thought, well, this is me without the talent of Jimmy Page. He said in his accent, he goes, "I really was seduced by rock and roll at a young age." And that's exactly what happened to me, because when I discovered it, that was it. I didn't have to think about it. I like this band. I don't know about the next step. Like, that's all I thought about was music from that point on. I wanted lots of records in my collection. I wanted a loud stereo. I wanted the shirts. I wanted a jean jacket with some stuff written on the back. Overnight, it just changed my life.
And just trying to find out where you fit in that whole thing, especially when you're not a musician, which I think we both can relate to in that respect.
Yeah.
Our love for music.
Yeah. I wish I was a musician, but I've dabbled in it here and there. I'm just not that great. And the commitment is half of it too. I just never had the commitment. But I did find that I could not consume enough information about the bands and the artists that I like. I would buy every magazine. I would read everything about them, just like everybody talks about. You buy the record, you put it on, you read every word on the inner sleeve, who produced it, where they recorded it at. Here's the lyric sheet. Oh, so-and-so. Oh, the second solo is this guy. All that stuff fascinated me. At like 10 years of age, I would soak this stuff up. I can remember before I even had my own first Kiss record that I would listen to. My mom had a couple of Elvis 8-tracks, and I'd get up super early like a kid does, and I'd put the 8-track, I think it was It was live in Hawaii. It was a live album, anyways.
Aloha in Hawaii.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, they
Yeah.
had it. My mom had it on 8-track, and I'd get up at like 5 in the morning. The old '70s headphones with the adjustment, the volume adjustments on each, and I would have it so loud. I think if the headphones are on, nobody can hear me, but I woke my family up. My dad would come out in his underwear yelling at me, "Turn that goddamn music down!" And those were my first memories of music, is being yelled at for it being played too loud. So you can imagine when I actually discovered a band that was mine, it was, the floodgates were open from there.
Oh, totally. But you talk about how crucial it was to be reading the liner notes and you're studying this stuff. Like, it seems you had to know this.
Yeah.
And that reminds me of thinking, of course, when we're young and you're getting your first cassettes or albums, your vinyls. And sometimes you might record something from a friend because you simply just don't have the funds to buy everything. But I always felt, as a person, when I had these recorded albums, that it's like, this isn't legit.
No.
I fast forward to current times, and I still can't wrap my head around to even a digital file. Even if you paid for it, it's like there's nothing there. So even thinking back when I was like 8, 9, 10, and I'm recording something from a friend, and I'd have a copy of it, but it never felt legit. Like, I felt like, until I actually have the product, I'm not a fan. I don't have the real thing.
No, you're not legit. You don't own it. It's not yours. You can listen to it. And I would do the same. I would tape stuff all the time, and I would make mixtapes for friends, and we'd trade them. And as a kid, you don't have money to go buy every record that you want. So, okay, I bought 2 records, but that guy has those 2, so I'll give him a tape and he'll record them. But inevitably, you like what you hear on the tape, so you must now, your goal, your mission becomes to own this actual album. And it got to, by my teens, by like 13 or 12, 13, 14, when I would go buy a record, I would always buy a 90-minute cassette, a blank one along with it. I'd go home and I would record my album on the cassette so that I could also listen to said album in my Walkman when I was riding my bike or doing my paper route or whatever. But it would be a stack of records and whatever blank tapes I needed to record those records. I did that. That was just my routine forever.
Yeah. And you're writing so carefully, like it was maybe you had a little bit of whiteout. You'd hate but the whiteout, it was like the worst.
Well, I'm a lefty too, so if I write, my hand will drag across the ink. So it was tricky doing those labels, but the trick is to do the labels and then put the label on the cassette. Don't put it on the cassette and try and write it. I can never.
No, you're screwed. You're screwed.
Yeah. And then when I got it, and then when I started in radio, of course, we used to send out demos, and they'd be on cassette back in the day. So you'd go to a place in Richmond called Western Imperial Magnetics.
Yeah.
And you buy a big box of blank tapes, chromium tapes, and you'd buy whatever labels you chose, and I run them through the typewriter, and I would just type it so it looked slick. Then and it was professional. Wow. I thought, well, this is going to get me hired in New York City for sure. It never did, but
that's pretty highfalutin.
Yeah, I thought I was ready to go. It looked good. You play it, it's a different story, though. That's the problem. It's got to sound good coming out of the speakers, and it didn't sound good coming out of the speakers for many years.
No. So, what was your first album that you bought with your own money?
Oh, with my own money? I know the first album I got.
Money, or somebody else's money.
Yeah, I got for my birthday, I got Kiss's Love Gun. And I still have that very copy today. I can remember, and it's my mom wrote my name on the back of it. I can still remember the argument we got into because I didn't want her to write my name on the back. I'm like, no, you're going to ruin the record. And I lost that battle because I was going to a guy's birthday party. And she says, if you're bringing that record, I'm writing your name on the back of it. So I have a couple of Kiss records with my name on the back. But every time I look at them, I think, that old lady, she just didn't get it. She just didn't get it. But that was the first one that I got. What's the first one I paid money for? I don't know if I know the answer to that question.
Or one of the first.
It would have been more Kiss records for a while until I branched out of Kiss when I discovered Ozzy and Black Sabbath and AC/DC, pretty much those 3 at the same time. So that'd be very early 80s. And then from there, it kind of exploded. Judas Priest was probably my favorite metal band for most of my life in junior high school. I love Maiden as well. Mm-hmm. A lot of people prefer Maiden to Priest. There was a bit of there was 2 camps there for a while, but something about Halford's vocals. I always liked the older albums with Priest too. Sad Wings of Destiny is still one of my all-time.
Killer.
But I also love Maiden. And then you get into, I don't know, I remember getting into Exciter, which was a fairly big leap, from like British Steel. But they were an up-and-coming metal band, and they were coming to the New York theater. So, and Exodus was opening up for them, who we knew were from San Francisco. We didn't know much else about them. But my friend and I bought tickets to that show in grade 8 or 9. And we had no idea how these smaller shows work because we'd only been to a couple of concerts and they were at the Coliseum. At the Coliseum, you'd skip out of the last block of school because growing up in White Rock, it's a bit of a hike over to the P&E. So you'd skip out the last block of school, you'd bus it to the Coliseum, and you'd be there by 2:30, 3 o'clock, waiting down by the floor for when they open the doors at 5 or 6. So you can be front row on the floor. We did the same thing at the New York Theater. We got there like 2:30 in the afternoon. Nobody's there. Nobody at all. Like it's a neighborhood. It's just, as you know, you grew up in that neighborhood, I think, if I'm not mistaken. But we'd never been there before. And we get there, so we're wandering around, went to the local corner store and got some chips or whatever. And then a white van pulled up, and it was Exodus. And so we sat there, shot the shit with Exodus for a few minutes. The drummer tried to sell us a drum head, which we thought was weird because we thought, aren't these guys rich beyond all compare? What do they need to? Because if you're a rock band that we heard of, in
your mind, they're as big as Judas Priest, even though they're playing a much smaller room. But it's like they're a band. They're on tour. They're huge. They got tons of money.
Tons of money. They're all crammed into a van with all their equipment, but that's just for show. They're loaded. But it was a cool experience. They were really nice guys. They didn't need to be nice to us. We're probably a pain in the ass. They hadn't even checked in with the venue yet. And I think we helped them move a couple things in or whatever. It was a really cool experience, though. But that was my first true metal show. And it just kind of went from there, right?
So whatever, around 84, 85, I guess.
I think it was 85.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe 84. I'd have to look. I have the ticket stub still for that show. But it was a lot of whatever was in Hit Parade or Circus or Kerrang. You'd learn about bands from the magazines back then, obviously, because there was no internet. So you'd read about these bands, and their image and their photographs were quite important because that kind of attracted you or not attracted you to them. So you put your list together, and then you take the bus from the 351 bus all the way downtown. We'd usually stop at CFOX first, get some stickers from the front desk, from Aunt B probably. And then we would go to Collector's RPM, was one of my favorite record stores because the guy had that big Kiss collection. And I bought a bunch of Kiss stuff from him over the years. A&B Sound, of course, and everything. Odyssey Imports, there's just so many downtown.
And Track.
Track. That's another one.
Track was a good time.
We go downtown and we spend all the money that we could. And I would save maybe like as little amount possible for food because I wanted to buy, like if I bought a record and I had like $3 left, well, maybe I can buy a pin. I'm going to get this pin, and now that's on the jean jacket. And so you come back a better rocker than you were when you went downtown.
But how it was such an event.
It was a total event.
It's not just about the show. It's much more than the show. Like you said, it's record shopping first. It's a whole day.
It's a whole day. We'd save up our money. We'd talk about it for weeks. We talk about the stuff we couldn't afford this time. So next month we're going to come back because I got to get that record. I have to get that one. That's the next on the list. That was your whole pursuit. You didn't realize you were collecting music at the time. Now we call it collecting, and I do. But I was collecting, I guess, But I didn't spend my money on anything else except maybe BMX stuff. But nothing else. Nothing else. You'll like this. The very first time, so grade 7 was when my elementary school ended. Grade 8 was junior high here, White Rock Junior. And so this was the first year my mom let me go buy my own back to school clothes instead of being dragged to the mall with your mommy and her telling you you're going to buy this button down shirt or this really dorky sweater. She gave me whatever amount of money she was going to give me. And I took the bus up to Semiahmoo Mall and I bought a pair of big blue jeans. That was the brand at the time. I had bought some pair of shoes, probably some Nikes. And I came home with this Motorhead shirt with the white sleeve, the white three-quarter.
Yeah, the baseball, yeah.
And the Motorhead logo, and I thought she was gonna have a heart attack. She goes, "You bought that shirt?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's awesome." I just thought it was the coolest shirt. I don't even know that I'd heard Motorhead. I have to be honest. I don't even know that I'd heard them, but I knew that the shirt is cool enough that I need to discover Motorhead. But for today, I'm buying the shirt. She did not like that at all, but I wore it first day of school, grade 8. Wore the Motorhead shirt.
That is brilliant.
It was a dog shirt.
School photo in it. That'd be awesome.
I lost all my annuals years ago. I know that in grade 8 on the ski team, I was wearing, and I still have this shirt, I was wearing my Kiss Animalize tour shirt when everybody else was a jock. I remember taking breakdancing lessons in grade 10 or 11. Don't laugh, but I took breakdancing lessons.
Perfect.
I love hip hop. I still love hip hop today, and I love breakdancing, but I was terrible at it. But when they told us that we were going to be on cable access TV recorded at BCIT, I thought, well, I don't want everybody thinking I'm only into rap. Like, I want people to know that I'm into rock. So I wore an Aussie shirt to this filming of a breakdancing competition. I probably looked like a complete idiot with this shirt on, but to me, it made perfect sense. It's going to be on TV. People need to know. Your identity was so important when you were a kid too, right? So,
well, you totally would have stood out, no doubt.
oh, I stood out, that's for sure.
Most people just shaking their head going,
I think they probably did. Yeah, they probably did. My mom was like, "Hey, you sure you want to wear that shirt?" But I'll never forget her reaction when I came home with the Motorhead shirt. She just thought, "Oh, this whole experiment was a complete waste. I need to take him back to the mall and buy a proper shirt." But she didn't. In fairness, my parents never really had too much of an opinion on, like some parents wouldn't let you listen to certain bands, or you had friends that their parents didn't let them listen to certain bands they thought might be satanic or anything like. There was never a conversation like that in my house. The only conversation was turn it down. It's too loud. But they didn't care what I listened to. They didn't care what shirts I bought.
and clearly you turned out horribly.
I know, right?
Yeah.
I'm a scourge of society. Yeah. Did I ever tell you the story? I don't know if I ever told you. We just went to WASP a couple weeks back.
Yes, that was a good time.
Did I ever tell you the story about the WASP shirt that I had back in grade 8?
Oh, the Talk Like a Bee shirt?
Yeah.
Vaguely. I think you did, but refresh, and listeners probably want to hear too.
I didn't get to go to the show because I didn't have money for the ticket. But a guy I knew, Eric, he went to the show and he bought the shirt. And on the back it said "Animal Fuck Like a Beast," which is the song. If people don't know, it's a song. Fairly what's the word? Controversial song back in the day. It wasn't easy to get it actually. He bought this shirt. He brought it home, and his mom says, "There's no effing way you're keeping this shirt. It's disgusting." So I bought it off him for $7 2 days after the concert. He probably paid 20 or whatever. I knew my mom wouldn't like it, but I knew she wouldn't make me get rid of it because I'd already broken the seal with the Motorhead shirt. So I bought this Wasp shirt. No, there's a great irony in a kid who's 13 or 14 walking around with "Fuck Like a Beast" on the back, because I don't even know if I knew how to jerk off at that time. But I had the shirt on and I was strutting around like, nobody's going to mess with me now at White Rock Junior, and the girls will be flocking to me. How can they resist, right? Seemed like a foolproof plan to me. I get to school and they call an assembly for whatever reason. So I'm sitting down in the gym. Before the assembly even starts, I get a tap on the shoulder from the principal. "Come with me, Mr. Grieve." Everybody starts laughing because they knew exactly what it was about. And so he says, "You can either take that shirt off and put on your gym strip shirt, or you're going home for the day." And I thought, well, if I put on the gym strip shirt, people are going to laugh at me because they're going to know exactly. They're going to know I got in trouble. So I took the day off. I went home. My mom wasn't happy that I got kicked out of school for this very shirt she didn't like. But I don't know. It felt like the right thing to do at the time. You got to take one on the chin once in a while, just for your own, what is the word? Your own pride, I guess.
No doubt. And without that, you wouldn't have this beautiful story.
I know, right? It's a great story. I never thought it'd be a story that I would tell, but it's it's a funny story. Like, if it happened to anybody else, I would still laugh just as hard. And the irony is that shirt disappeared somewhere down the line.
Oh.
I wish I still had it. I would have never thrown it away. And I've said this to my mom. I'm like, I wouldn't have thrown that away. You must have done something. So to this day, we still, at Christmas time or whatever, we'll have a pretend little argument about it. She claims she never threw it away. I believe her, actually. I just tease her. But it's sort of this family joke that's never died, the Wasp shirt.
That is awesome. Well, this has been fun. I don't want to keep you all day because I know you got stuff going on, but I think, this would be, I think this is a good introduction for people to getting to know you. And I think it would be awesome to do this again and do some music chat, some history, talk about some other previous shows, and just air some grievances, whatever else.
I would love to. Yeah. Anytime, JJ. I'd love to.
Well, this was fun. And so thanks to my guest, Danger. This is Different Stages Radio, and we'll see you again.
Thanks, JJ.
See you.